a mockumentary about supposed mermaids in the Mariana Trench. What happens when it turns out those mermaids aren't a myth and are real and are not anything like what anyone could have imagined? Or maybe some people could have imagined what they would be like. Today, we're going to talk about the book Into the Drowning Deep by Mira Grant, which I had no idea was a pseudonym used by Shauna Maguire for when she writes her horror books. So this book is about killer mermaids, and it was quite the gruesome and anxiety-inducing read. I felt it was genuinely scary, but what was most scary was the anticipation of the mermaid attack. Okay, so whole story revolves around this. There was this company, Imagine Entertainment, and they got into this whole thing of filming like cryptozoological mockumentaries. They did them for a bunch of different type creatures like the Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot, and then they decided to do this lovely ladies of the Mariana Trench, mermaids. They send a whole crew out there, and what happens is they find mermaids and they're killer mermaids, and everyone from that ship disappears. No one comes back. The boat's found, and there's no one on it. And they do find footage, and it's of these weird, creepy, somewhat like weird humanoid aquatic creatures that look like mermaids. They're kind of simian face, long eel tail creatures, and they have crazy sharp teeth, and they're predators. One of the great predators of the deep. One of the people in the story, Victoria or Tori, she lost her sister who went on the journey, and her sister was like the face of Imagine Entertainment for these documentaries, and she was lost with this. So her sister Tori, and the woman who had died was Anne. That was her sister's name. So Tori has kind of been obsessed with this for years, wanted to know what happened and all that stuff. So when the opportunity arises to have another crew go back out, and also the footage that was recovered, Imagine and everyone were like, oh, it's a hoax. They told people it wasn't real, this, that, and the other. So no one really believed it. But they're going to send out another expedition. This is maybe like 3 years later. And Tori is going to be on it because she wants to know what the heck happened to her sister, what happened to Anne. Like, she knows mermaids are real. There's also a ton of like scientists going on this. There's a couple big game hunters, you know, in case the mermaids are real. A lot of the people don't believe that they're real, and then there is those that do. It's kind of a mixed bag. And then they obviously end up going out there and discovering, oh yeah, the mermaids are real, and probably a bunch of people are going to die because these things are ravenous, hungry beasts, and they don't have a whole lot of food where they live. They only come up to hunt because the food sources of what used to be down there just isn't out there anymore. And so it goes into some of like the environmental stuff and stuff affecting the ocean and food sources and this, that, and the other. And just the way that the mermaids were described, like, I thought it was a pretty good description, like with the whole weird eel-like tails and like how they had their hair had like bioluminescence in it, kind of like how anglerfish attract their prey, you know, especially like down there in the deep where it's dark and you can't really see. And then how they explain the anatomy of it and just the whole biological aspects of it too. I want to say Shauna Maguire, but Mira Grant, Shauna Maguire did a really awesome job of kind of like delving into like the what ifs if mermaids did actually exist and how they could be. And it was a little slow moving in the beginning. It did take me a hot minute to get into it, but once I did, I would say it took me at least 100 pages to get fully invested. If you start reading it and it's a little slow in the beginning, try and hang in there because it gets so much better. And then, like I said, it's like very anxiety inducing once you're like waiting for the mermaid attacks, and they kind of attack in waves. And so they go on this really huge boat. The security systems they're supposed to have in place are failing. There's supposed to be these shutters that like shut and like keep the boat sequestered off from the dangers of all these mermaids, but those aren't working, so they're trying to get these dudes to fix it. The first person who dies is someone who goes down in a submersible. She goes down into the Mariana Trench and she refuses to, she doesn't listen when people are trying to tell her to come back. And so she dies. And so then they have the footage and they know that they're real, and so the people on the boat start whispering this, that, and the other, and a good chunk of these people don't seem to have the reality of this, that they're going to be attacked, and like, since they just don't believe. And so that also adds to like the weird anxiety in the atmosphere. And then people also, I don't know, they kind of brush it off, or I don't know what they thought, because I don't know if everyone saw the footage. But anyways, slowly but surely, people start being picked off, and it's just very gruesome. And will anyone survive? It's a great horror book. I love underwater horror, so this super appealed to me. I've read a few books about mermaids that were mermaid horror. This is probably the best one I've read. I'm going to make an admission here, and people are going to be like, I can't believe you haven't read this author before. Okay, so I've never read Shauna Maguire. And I've never read anything under her own name, but now that I've read her horror, that makes me want to read other stuff. So if you guys have any recommendations by either Mira Grant / Shauna Maguire that you liked a lot, let me know, because I am definitely curious to read more. I really enjoyed the writing, I enjoyed the characters. There's a bit of a love interest on it too. It doesn't overtake the story, but I am a fan of horror romance. If you're a fan of horror romance, I do also have a video where I talk about some of my favorite horror romances, and I can link that down below if you want to check that out. But anyway, great horror, dark, disturbing, descriptive, and would highly recommend if you like underwater horror and killer mermaids and that sounds good to you. Definitely check it out. And if you enjoyed hanging out today, hit that subscribe button, come back, see me again, and we'll talk about more bookish things and weird stuff.